Hello and welcome to our tutorial on how to make the 61-7 blouse with lapel collar and French cuffs. We have already sewn the bust darts in the front piece. The open darts on front and back pieces will be sewn later. Now sew the shoulder seams, easing the seam at the back. What that means, the front should be pulled ever so slightly while sewing. Sew the side seams. Iron the seam allowances apart both for the side seams and shoulder seams. Reinforce the facing pieces with fusible interfacing. Finish the outer side of your facing pieces. You can use a single zigzag stitch. However, it looks much more professional if you do a very narrow double-sided hem along this line that will be visible on the inside of your blouse. For this first, do a zigzag, then roll the edge twice and use a straight machine stitch and sew along this rolled hem. Lay the collar pieces right sides together. Sew the upper collar edge and the narrow collar edge together. Trim the seam allowances at the corner, turn the collar and press flat. We suggest understitching the seam allowance to your collar because it will make this edge much more durable and it will always lay better in the future. Pin the collar to the neck edge and sew up to the marked seam marks. For a lapel collar, it is super important that you only sew until this mark number 1 on your sewing pattern. Lay the facing on the front pieces and the neck edge, right sides together. You can see how the facing also goes over mark number 1 and along the collar seam line. Now sew the whole facing from the very top along the collar line down to your hem along the front edge with a straight machine stitch. Omit the 1 centimeter seam allowance at the beginning and end of this seam, about 1 to 2 centimeters distances. Here you can see how the seam allowances are not yet sewn. For a cleaner finish on your neckline, take a piece of bias tape in the length of your back neck width. Fold and iron along the long edge. Trim the seam allowance of your back neckline to about half a centimeter. Fold the facing away and stitch the bias band on top of your folded seam allowance and along the back neckline. Now fold everything down and iron well. Understitch the facing and neckline on your front edge. For this, sew very near to your initial seam while securing all seam allowances to your facing pieces. At the very front edge of your lapel collar, trim the corner in a rectangular shape without hurting the seam. Fold the seam allowances into a neat edge and turn everything out. Use a wooden stick or knitting needle for really forming that front corner. At the inner shoulder seams, fold the seam allowance of your facing inwards and secure the facing on the shoulder seam and the bias tape along the neckline with invisible hand stitches.